Hello, welcome to CubeCast, a new and original podcast. Please join me as I go behind the scenes in the healthcare industry, where I invite professionals, doctors, healthcare practitioners, and we tell their stories. I invite them to this show, to be able to learn from them, their dedication, their hard work, their career success, their ups and downs, and more importantly, their advice for the next generation. There's so many moments that I have practitioners and students coming in and observing me, and all they're asking is questions about how to become a chiropractor or a doctor or a practitioner. And it's one of those hard decisions to be able to make in life and set a career goal and career path. So this journey, this show will help us answer some of those questions and be able to hopefully make it a little bit easier for the next generation to be able to make these tough decisions in life. I'm very honored and happy today. It's a very special episode for me. I have a very renowned and well-known chiropractor at the pinnacle of our profession. He's been involved in so many sport teams and professional athletes. He's been involved with the Olympics 2012, where he's won gold medal with the Great Britain track and field team. He's won championships and the Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks. He's won NBA championship with the Golden State Warriors. And it's a special honor for me because he's also been my mentor and someone that I have looked up to and been inspired by and learned a lot from him. And I had the privilege of working with him for a couple of years. And, is none other but Dr. Gerry Ramogida. So it's my honor to have Dr. Gerry Ramogida here. Gerry, welcome to CubeCast. It's a pleasure having you. And I think it's been 2-3 years since we've seen each other.
Absolutely. It's been a little while. Let me start by saying, man, what an honor it is to be here. This is... in the intro, you said we worked together for a few years and we've spent time together and had many of the hard conversations about, this profession and what you were getting yourself into when you started this clinic. And it's such an honor to see how far you've come and to see this beautiful facility. And now, taking the time to give of yourself to give back to the profession. I mean, it's an honor for me. So.
Oh my God, that means the world to me. Someone that I consider my mentor, I look up to. So it's a great pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. That means the world. And I know how busy you are with your career and your life, and spending time after hours. Coming over. It's like 8 p.m. here. Trying to. Give back to the next generation. And it's an honor for us to have you and learn from you and, share some of your experiences. And just a little bit before anything, maybe if you can tell us a little bit of your background, where you grew up and,
Sure.
When you started chiropractic profession, how many years ago that was?
I can't remember what I said. Was it? I started in
1997 or
so
something, yeah.
We're almost 30 years.
1997, 25 years, 26 years.
It's gone by in a blink.
Yeah.
It's gone by in a blink. To go way back, I was born in Vancouver, one of the few born and raised and still here, I was there till, 5, 6, and then moved to Surrey and grew up in Surrey and went to school, graduated from Holy Cross High School and then went on to UBC. Did a Bachelor of Science at UBC and kind of always knew I grew up playing sports in every sport that I could play, soccer and baseball and track and field, everything that my parents would let me play. That was long before today's day and age where everyone specialized in a sport and played the same sport all year round. I mean, soccer was September to, I can't remember when we
March
finished.
Or April,
and then baseball was next, and then track was at school, and that's what you did, basketball. So I loved sports. Soccer was my main sport, and I remember I was watching a Super Bowl actually between it was the San Francisco 49ers, I think, against might have been the Bengals. And Jerry Rice was being adjusted on the sideline by a chiropractor. His name was Dr. Atlas, actually.
Yeah.
I met him years later, and I told him, listen, you're the reason I became a chiropractor. Because
Really?
I saw that broadcast, and I was like, wow, That's cool.
That's pretty cool.
This guy's working on arguably the greatest receiver in the history of football on the sideline in the Super Bowl. And so that kind of inspired me because at the time I was looking at medicine and physical therapy, chiropractic, and I ironically, I applied to UBC medicine. I got to my third interview, and back in the day then, you had 3 interviews. You got your first round, and if you did okay, they passed you to the second. And if you did okay the second, you got to the third, which was with, at the time, the Dean of Admissions, Dr. Carter. And I remember I had done a class in biomedical ethics that summer. And it was at the time where this whole discussion of euthanasia or assisted death had started. And at the time, the medical profession was vehemently against it. And I had my paper that I spent months on was on the topic, and I didn't get to choose. I was given the topic, give the argument for euthanasia. So I studied for months the system in the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. And so after...
because they had started, they had it there,
And so I remember thinking, I knew what he wanted me to say. And I had like the devil on one side and the angel on one side. Angel's like, just tell him what he wants to hear. We are here to preserve life, and we can withdraw services, but we can't assist. No, I couldn't do it. I had spent all that time writing the paper. I was like, so I went into it, and anyway, I have to thank Dr. Carter because Dr. Carter told me that I needed a little more life experience and that I should reapply after a year, go travel. And I was like, I've been in school forever. I wish I had the money to go travel. So, and at that point I had been accepted into 3 different chiropractic colleges, and I was like, well, I guess that's my path. And that's how it started. And it's kind of one door closes, another door opens, and
exactly.
Here we are.
That's interesting. So you went to chiropractic school mid-90s, finished around 96, 97, did your board exams, and then have been chiropractor since then, 6 years in the making.
Yeah.
So tell me about your path. I know, you've had an experience of working both in private practice and obviously, you're working with so many professional teams. The first few years, how was it? And I know we had a conversation about how you have to do the grind work, right? And so
there's, unfortunately, there's no fast track. I mean, maybe for some people, but certainly not for the vast majority. When I started, I knew I wanted to get into sports. I knew the sports I enjoyed. I grew up in Vancouver. I loved hockey. I played soccer, loved soccer. I played football all through high school and really loved the game of football. So when I graduated, I went to Western States. And
same school,
and great education. You learn. I would never. I'm so grateful for the education I received there, and excellent clinical education. But you can only do so much when you're in school trying to learn all the fundamentals.
Yeah, it's only 4 years. 4 years, a significant amount of time. Yeah.
And so when I came out, I was like, okay, I want to get involved in sport. And, I'm just going to go and volunteer for everything I can. And like I said, we were talking earlier, I volunteered with the local hockey team. I was with a soccer team. I volunteered with the Langley Rugby Club, which had first, second, third division men's and a women's team. I volunteered at UBC. So my practice was in Aldergrove, basically the other side of the planet. And I drove an hour and a half to get to UBC to make it before practice, a couple nights a week to work on them, and then that led to working with the BC Lions. But where I really got my break and what really led me into sport was I used to go to Minaroo Park in Richmond, which was a nice track, and I fortunately got connected with a great young track coach named Kevin Tyler, and at the time he had some really talented athletes, and they were competitive at the national level, but they were just starting, and it just happened that from my timing and starting to work with them, they started to ascend into that cusp of international and eventually pushed into that. And at the same time, active release techniques was coming along.
Soft tissue work. Technique, yeah.
And I took that first course, and, I gained a number of mentors. Mark Scappaticci, Mark Lindsay, Rob DiStefano, so many guys, John Schneider, so many of these guys that were doing everything that I wanted to do. They were in the NFL. They were working with the best athletes in the world. Mark Lindsay and Mark Scappaticci were with Donovan Bailey. And so what happened very early on, I saw it was possible, and I knew it was a lot of work, and I knew I had to volunteer, and I knew I had to kind of prove myself, but I knew it was possible. And, I always had the dream of working in the NFL, but I was in Vancouver, and people are like, well, how are you going to do that? I said, I don't know. But I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep working for it.
Yeah.
And literally one day, my phone rang, and it was the head strength coach of the Seattle Seahawks. And he goes, hey, Gerry, I was talking to Coach Dan Paff, whom, because of track, I got to know, who was at the University of Texas. Dan, of any one individual who shaped the path of my career, was Dan. He had an incredible eye and knowledge for biomechanics. And it was with him at the side of the track where
he's a chiropractor, right?
No, he's a coach.
He's just a coach. Okay.
A coach.
Wow.
Yeah.
You learn all that. Oh, okay.
I went into his office the first time, and the stack of papers and books and videos and VHS tapes, because at the time it was VHS. There weren't even discs then.
Back in the day,
like stacks of VHS tapes, and he has the old VHS where you had to like go frame by frame with the little handheld. And
can I pause, go?
Yeah. And he's showing me biomechanics of sprinting. And so we're on the side of the track, and he's like, look, see, if you watch Donovan, his right knee isn't driving as high as his left. Bring him over here. Just do a little bit of release on his hip. Okay. And through that effort, we came up with this whole concept of performance therapy, and now why every team has performance therapists. And it just came down to understanding what the athlete was trying to achieve, what the coach was teaching them, and then how the manual therapy could enhance what everyone was trying to accomplish. And so that I worked with Kevin. We had a few athletes do well. Because of that, I ended up at nationals. I met Donovan Bailey and Bruni Surin and
the legends, right?
Those legends. And the track world's small, so when you're at an event, if someone needs help, you're like, yeah, I'm in. So I started working with Donovan and Bruni, and I spent a lot of time with Bruni Surin. He was the first one that took me on an international trip. That we could spend a whole night just on that trip because it was a disaster. Bags lost and getting to Greece, and nothing was in English. So I thought, because we lost our bags, I bought some cream. I thought it was cream. It was shampoo, so he ended up like every time he got into his skin was burning, and then he got into the shower and everything was sudsing up. We're like,
right before the Olympics,
right? This was before an event. This is right before a competitive competition. So, but anyway, it's just, And then because Dan was their coach, I got to know Dan. And then I used to try to go and spend as much time every year in Texas as I could, because it was a learning ground. I wasn't getting paid, but I was
all volunteer, right?
Yeah, all volunteer. But I knew if I understood the sport as well as I could, and I could make those quick inputs to improve range of motion in a joint that we saw as restricted, or could influence the athlete's ability to move more efficiently, that it would give me an advantage. And that's how I ended up in the NFL, because the head strength coach for the Seahawks was good friends with Dan. They had a need for someone who could do ART. He called Dan, said, hey, do you know anyone close to Seattle that could help us out? Because we need someone who could come in and teach our staff. And that was it. It was supposed to be a couple of years while I taught the staff, and then they wouldn't need me, and I'd be done. And 17 years later, I was still there.
And you won the Super Bowl with them.
We won one. We lost two. Mm-hmm. One of the most painful losses in my life. The second one. Against the New England Patriots.
Yeah.
And but yes, having the opportunity to win a Super Bowl, incredible.
Yeah.
You know, like I'll never forget that. My wife was there, and they let family down onto the field after in New York, and the confetti coming down, and you hear Queen, "We Are the Champions" up in the, and then Van Halen standing on top of the world as the confetti's coming down. I mean, and then holding the Lombardi Trophy. I mean, frick, a kid from Surrey, man, holding the Lombardi Trophy, like from, you know, like
where you started. But I think the interesting thing is that you say this maybe in like a 2-minute span, but this is just years of, you know, volunteer work and grind work and on your own dime and time effort going down to Texas.
I didn't make $1 in sports for the first 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And at that 7 years, it was just Kevin had done enough work. They did manure sales, like for the garden.
Fertilizer.
They got all the athletes shoveling manure and selling manure so that they could raise enough money so they could pay for my travel.
Really?
And then I was happy because my travel was paid for.
But even if it wasn't, you probably would have had to pay it yourself, right?
I would have done it because you make a commitment to these kids on Olympic cycles, and that's a 4-year cycle. And once you're in the middle of a cycle, it's not like you can just back out and say, "Oh yeah, find someone else."
Yeah. And I think another important point is that obviously, you know, you said from the first coach, you know, a friend of a friend, you know, knew the person in Seattle Seahawks and they contacted you. That is a connection, but those connections aren't built until you actually do this grind work and 100%. Prove yourself and show yourself, 100%. Right? And it's like doors open once you put that effort in. Because I think a lot of times people forget, you know, the in-between, the before and after, right? Like, oh, look at Gerry, so successful. He must have known someone. But no.
It's what's that saying? It's the overnight success that took 10 years, you know, like, and that's really what it is. And if I could give any advice, I mean, that's find whatever it is, if it's private practice, if it's an area in private practice, if it's pediatrics, if it's orthopedics, whatever it is, if it's sports, if it's a particular sport. And you know, Kevin Dielman spent a couple of years with me when we were downtown, and he loved golf. And he was like, I don't know if I should go out into White Rock and start my own thing and work with golf. I'm like, go, man, go. Like,
give it a go.
You find those things that you're passionate about and you dedicate yourself to them. And then the other thing that we can never forget in these professions, whatever it is, physio, chiro, massage, MD, it's about service.
You can't forget what you're there for.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about service. Someone taught me very early. They said, you know what? If you treat the patient in front of you as if it's your only patient, as if they're your only patient, you'll be successful. And it's 100% true.
Yeah.
You can't be thinking about, okay, what do I got to do after work? And, you know, I got to get this, I got to do this and that. Mm-hmm. Your focus, like I say to people, we don't choose these professions. We're called to these professions. And
that's a good sentence. I like that one.
It's the truth. It's the truth. I mean, if people think they're coming into these for money, there's a lot easier ways to make a lot of money.
That's actually true. That's actually a point that I want to bring on a little bit later, you know, because everyone just assumes that, you know, Dr. Gerry working for, you know, the Golden State Warriors, he must be making millions, right? But we'll come back. How before that, how is it fast forward after the Seattle Seahawks, working with them for so many years, winning the Super Bowl, you got called on to Golden State Warriors. So Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and how that started?
Yeah. So, you know, Vancouver is really... Canada in general, we have a lot of really good providers. Mm-hmm. Like you look at the Toronto Raptors with Alex McKechnie, who is grandfather of physiotherapy in North America.
Sports physiotherapy,
you know, and him and Dr. Rick Celebrini. You know, Alex started with Shaq and then got hired by the Lakers, and now he's been the head, up in upper management with the Raptors for many years now, mm-hmm. and won a championship there. But so with the Warriors, what happened? I was working, with Fortius.
Yeah, we were working together there.
Dr. Rick Celebrini, and I knew each other for many years.
And he was the head of the sports.
He was hired by the Warriors to be their head of player health and performance. I can't remember now. He's a VP.
Oh, he is. Okay, yeah, still with them, right?
He's still there,
yeah.
And. I'll never forget it. I was doing a half Ironman, and my wife and son were watching. This mm-hmm. was in Santa Rosa, California. My hamstrings were cramping so freaking bad.
Yeah.
I could barely get across the finish line. And I get across, and my wife is like, you know, after she congratulates me because I finished and I was still alive.
Finishing that is an achievement on its own.
So she's like, you better answer your phone. Rick has called you about 15 times today. I'm like, okay, if Rick's calling, something's up. So we get to this restaurant. I sit down, my hamstrings stop cramping. I get some food, and then I call Rick, and he's like, hey, he went through some of the background, and he's like, hey, and so I have this opportunity to go down and lead the team at the medical performance side at Golden State. Would you come? I'd love to have you come and just do the soft tissue and your movement type work and evaluation. And I'm like, let me talk to my wife.
Let me think about it.
Let me think about this
NBA team.
I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson.
Yeah.
At the time, Kevin Durrant.
Kevin Durrant was there too that year.
I'm like, are you kidding? I'm like,
that was probably the top professional team of any sport. They had
just won 3 and 4 years.
Yeah.
And they were the first team that had a chance to three-peat. And I'm like,
the Bulls, like Chicago Bulls. I think they were just comparing them to Chicago Bulls back then. Yeah.
Well, if you think they've been to 6 in the last 10 years, they've been to 6 finals, if not more. I may be wrong.
How many? They've probably won
4.
They've won
right?
4. Yeah.
And so I hung up the phone, and I knew I had a chance because my wife told me there were 2 places she wanted to live. London was one, and we checked that box because we had the opportunity to go to London for the London games for that 3 years. And then the second place she said she wanted to live was San Francisco.
No way.
So I'm
what
like,
are the chances?
What are the chances? What are the chances?
Wow.
So that's, you put things out in the universe and sometimes it hears you. Actually, it hears you. That's why you need to be careful the voice and the things you tell yourself.
Yeah.
The universe is listening. We could get into those types of philosophical discussions.
But you put it out there. Honestly, sometimes these things just work in really weird ways, right?
So I said to my wife, hey, you want to go to San Francisco? And I think at first she thought I was joking, and then I explained the situation, and she's like, okay, all right, let's see.
How did you even pitch that? Like, do you want to go to San Francisco? Golden State Warriors are calling me to be their chiropractor? Like, that's how many times do you ever hear that sentence, right?
Not before and not since.
Wow.
And so, I also have this belief, like, if you start saying no to opportunities, the opportunities stop coming. And so
that's very true. Yeah.
And so, after some discussion and then some back and forth and some contract negotiations, which I'm terrible at, we went,
That's crazy, man. I think that was just a tiny bit after I had left. And
you had just left, and Nav had just come on, and Eric Ewell was the veteran, had been there with me from the beginning. And then he took over there for me, and then I was down to San Francisco. And you moved with your family to San Francisco? The first year they didn't come because the offer came late in August, and my son was already enrolled in school in Lynn Valley. So the thought was I'd get through that first year, and then they'd come down.
So kind of like back and forth.
A little bit of back and forth. They came down. I was home in that first year. And then in the second year, my son was a ski racer. So we had what happened, we sold our house in Lynn Valley because we were going to sell that because we knew we were spending most of our time in California. And just ironically, out of the blue, a friend of mine who had a small condo in Whistler said, hey, because I had always told him if he wants to sell it, let me know. I don't know if I can buy it. Literally, the day I had an accepted offer on my house, he called and said, hey, do you want to buy my condo?
Things are just like, universe is lining up for you, man.
I'm like, because I was in trouble in that, if you pay your mortgage early, you get massive penalties.
Yeah.
So I'm like, Keith, this timing is perfect because I can just transfer my mortgage over and we can do that because we weren't going to buy in San Francisco. At best, we were thinking this was a 3 or 4 year thing.
Contract, yeah.
And so what that allowed was my son was a big ski racer. He was racing from when he was 5 years old. We used to take him all over BC, and do these events. And so the one thing we didn't want to do was take skiing away from him. So given that now we had this opportunity to buy this condo, we're like, you know what? Let's let him train in Whistler for ski season because they have the best coaches and the best program. And then the rest of the year, come to California. Well, it was a great plan and practice. And then unfortunately, COVID hit.
Oh, man.
So he was up there. My wife and son were up there. They were with me from September until October 31st because my wife wanted Nicholas to go trick or treating with his friends, and then they went up there. He started training, and then February of 21. Was it 2020? February of 2020. The world stopped.
Yeah.
We were Carl Bergstrom, also from North Vancouver, who was there as the head performance coach.
From Porteous went with you. Yeah.
So he was there, and he and I looked at each other and said, hey, the league is going to shut down. We need to get in the car and get across the border before they close the border. So that's exactly what we did. The league closed. We hopped in the car. We drove through the night. We got across the border, and 2 days later, they shut the border. So I was at home for that from February until December when the league started again. And then I was down there until, what happened with my wife. She wasn't feeling well, and that kind of started that whole journey. But the plan of them coming to California was there, but that never quite materialized as the way we envisioned. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and on that topic, I think sometimes we just talk about all these success stories, and you always said, put it out in the universe, and things, happen for a good reason. But I think sometimes what people don't hear is the setbacks and like the downfalls and all the things that happen in both career and also personal life. And I think something personal happened to you, that really was like a bit of a defining moment in your career as well. And
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we can get into that. My wife wasn't feeling well, and just what she was describing, I was like, you know what, I'm going to come home, and just up at Lionsgate Hospital.
Yeah.
And she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4. I remember, she didn't know what that meant. I knew right away what it meant, and asked the doctor to show me the CT scan, and two tumors in her liver and in the pancreas. And if it as an experience, it taught me a lot. She sacrificed so much, and this is the thing. If anyone takes one thing from tonight and what we're talking about, this, like you said, the successes are amazing. The number of failures and difficult times far outweigh the championships and the gold medals. But the one thing that's consistent, that for anyone to accomplish anything, with a family, is you having someone who's there who supports you through it all. And unfortunately, oftentimes in life, we need these events to make us look back and go, shoot, you know what? Like, I did not have my priorities right. Because, and I'm not saying don't chase the dream. I would never say that, because my wife would have never wanted me not to do these things. Yeah. But what I learned is there were times where I took it for granted.
The fact that she's there,
that she was there, and there were you realize that you need to take every opportunity to tell them how much you appreciate what they do, because you may think they know it, and you may think it's been expressed, but you can never express it enough. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's somewhere else I was going to go with that, but at the end of the day, when when you have that kind of diagnosis and you know what the prognosis is, and my wife did incredibly well. Like, she was diagnosed in February. By late October, we had a clear PET scan. We had quite an amazing treatment protocol and treatment plan. And I had good fortune of knowing people from the UK and stem cell work, doing stem cell work. And so I pulled together all the resources. Yeah. And in October, the doctors were, and I told them everything we were doing, but at the time you get that diagnosis, 5-year survival rate is 7%, maybe 9% now, but that's if you catch it stage 2 or better, which only 20% are caught at. And
especially with that specific type.
With that type. And so when we had the clear PET scan in October, the doctors were like, what were you guys doing? Because they had never seen it. And the tumors were healed in her liver, and they couldn't see a mass in the pancreas anymore. And so, the one thing we had through it all was hope that she was doing well and she felt great. And then, like an aggressive metastatic disease does, it kind of snuck by us, and then it went very quickly. But, it taught me that freaking every day is a gift. Every day is a gift. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. So love what you're doing. Tell the people around you how much they mean every day. And be grateful for every opportunity, because like you never know.
Yeah.
And so if you live your life from a place of joy and, like I said, service, because ultimately we're all given and bestowed these gifts, we have our hands, and the way that we give love back to the world is through our gifts, and everyone has their gifts, and that's really giving back of those talents is really, I think, why we're all here. So.
No, that's well said, and I really appreciate you sharing this personal situation and what happened in your life, and it's changed your life. I know personally how it's changed your life.
Yeah, but
and she's really missed. I think a year and a half ago that it happened, right?
Yeah. I mean, so I try to honor her by remembering those things, and just bringing that passion every day to keep doing a good job.
I appreciate it, man. I know you're getting a little bit teary eyes, and I'm getting a little bit teary eyes, and
we need more of the red wine from it.
A little bit of, I think, water is good. But I think it's as you said, like you sometimes get caught up in the success and like just to go and like career development, and it's to sit back and really not only appreciate the moment, but also be very thankful for all the people around us that
100%
have helped us get to that success. Without them, there wouldn't be if she wasn't staying behind, take care of your
taking
your
care of my
child,
son.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I know your life, and I got a little segment of how me looking at your life, shaped some of the career decisions of mine, because I've been looking at your career for the longest time, and I actually joined Fortius because of you and knowing about you, even though it took you 9 months to hire me. I remember, I think I had like 17 emails and like 5 interviews or something. I'm like, what is going on? But it's just these moments, and really, recognizing that, and I know that these behind the scenes are the important parts that people need to recognize. That it takes these, and everyone, even the most pinnacle of our profession, and even you have stories like that you have to tell. And I know in the past year and a half you'd had to drop your position with the Warriors, right? And
yeah, I basically, it was winning that championship was just because of how supportive the team was, and the players would say prayers for Selena before the start of games, and
that's nice.
And she'd be asking me, did they win? And so to win that championship was just incredible.
Special moment. Huh?
But and then when after we won and we had the parade and enjoyed all that, and I knew, I needed to get home, and the last year and a half was full time with my son, and as you can imagine, a teenager losing mom, and so he needed me. So I was doing a half day a week, two half days a week of work, and trying to keep him on course, and thankfully, he's doing great. He's doing great now. We've got him back with his old friends in school, and for every difficult situation that life throws at you. I mean, really, people say, "Oh, you're so, you're really strong to get through that." But it's really, I mean, what choice do you have?
You just have to move forward.
You have to move forward. It's what if you lose a loved one, it's what your loved one would want. They don't want you sitting there wallowing and letting life pass you by. Life
it's
is
probably what she wanted the best, right? The most.
Life is meant to be lived. And so, we went through those hard times, and we had the support of friends and family, and my mother was up and helping a lot, and we made friends in Whistler, and I have close friends that, were there, and you make your way through. And now, I mean, some days I wake up and aside from the experience, I people ask me, how you doing? And I'm like, tell me how my life gets better. Like I have this opportunity with the Sacramento Kings in a position
just recently, right?
Came up with this opportunity to work in a halftime, slightly more than halftime capacity, in a role where I get to have input into decisions and get to help shape how that, treatment and rehab goes. And, and so that, and just, like I said, it's changed. I just approach everything with gratitude, man. Every day. Just, you go out, like I said, I have to take my dog out and look at the sun or the rain or whatever it is. And it's like, man, I get another day,
That's so powerful, Gerry. Honestly, that's something to learn from. And having known you for so many years, and I think one of probably the most important thing that I've learned from you is, being grateful, being humble about, where you come from, and like not, forgetting the past, how you've stood on the shoulders of others to pave your way, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the most, if not the most important, thing to learn from this, someone like yourself. And that's something that I've always remembered from you. I remember, even when we were at Fortis together, I know how busy you were with teams travel. You would take the time to, sit down with me and give me some advice and for me to pick your brain on
what it was worth.
No, honestly, I have, I always tell people, I'm like, for who you are and what your name brings to our profession and how successful you've been, the fact that you're so humble about it, it's something to cherish.
It's like you said, like in this province we have Wilbur Kelsick, who, and my brain's not working right now, but on the island, it'll come to me, and Brad Yee and guys like that who set they started it. Wilbur started the path and track for chiropractors. And then we have people like Dr. Jack Taunton, a sports med physician who, for all intents and purposes, why would he worry about chiropractic? But he knew the athletes wanted it. And he was the first one that got chiropractic accepted as a core medical service in 2010. And so
Olympics, 2010 Olympics in Vancouver. Yeah,
absolutely. And so I look at it. I've had incredible opportunities, but it's because of those guys that came before and made it acceptable that there be a chiropractor on the Canadian track and field team. And and so you just we get, like, it's the same. Einstein said it, I am where I am because I stood on the shoulder of giants. It's
exactly.
That's what it is. And so, and like we were saying, my greatest pride, the events and the winning and stuff is fun, but man, seeing like you and the other guys I mentioned before, and Eric and all you guys doing well, and now you're making a difference. I mean, that's
well, trying to make a difference and like give back to the next generation, right? And learning from the best. But I think that also a bit of a good segue to the next topic is where you talked about this work-life balance you kind of alluded to when you were working with the teams and traveling back and forth with your wife and your child and your son, and how difficult it is. Can you maybe shed a little bit more light as to what that looked like exactly? Working with like the Warriors, being on and off and like traveling with them, and what does it take actually? And then I think another part that maybe a lot of people might not necessarily understand is, they just assume that because you're a chiropractor of how many, 32 basketball teams, right? And, it might be one, maybe some of them have two chiropractors, like maybe 40, 50 chiropractors in total or sports medicine of any kind of work with teams, right? So You're a handful of, less than 100 people that get to have this privilege. But I think a lot of people just assume that because you work with them, you're making, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and, the difference between that and private practice. And so maybe you could touch base on that and, let people.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the travel, depending on the sport, like NFL, you played at the time when I was there, it was 16 games and you had three or four preseason games. And now they're up to 18 regular season games, and I think they've cut out one preseason game. But, the NFL was nice because it was, you knew you were playing pretty much every Sunday. Yeah. You might have one Monday and then you have one Thursday. And so everything was quite predictable, and it ran from September till, and if you went to the Super Bowl, till that first weekend of February, or second weekend of February. Second or first, it's before Valentine's, so it must be the first weekend of February.
Yeah, Valentine's is February 13th.
Yeah. So NFL wasn't bad, but you're still with the team Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I mean, I was down there because my family was in Vancouver, so I'd drive down and I'd work Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah, that wasn't as hard, right?
Yeah.
Because of the distance, right?
Yeah. It was a 2-hour drive, and often my wife and son would come, and so it wasn't bad. But there's still a lot of weekends where you're not home.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of sacrifice. A lot of family events you miss. If there were weddings that happened through the fall, I always missed them. My son's birthday, we'd always do them in the middle of the week so that I was home. But,
because you can't say no, like if you're with a professional team, there's no no.
There's
right?
no no. I mean, you could see what happens.
But one season of doing that next season.
Yeah. And so you miss out on a lot. And then, those weekends that you're gone and you miss your son's first steps, and you come back and he's already doing 3 or 4, and you're like, oh man, I missed that. I remember the hardest thing for me, with track and field. We'd do training camps, warm weather camps, and they'd be 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. The longest were 6 weeks, and you'd be gone for 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. I remember my wife telling me I was in LA. She was in London, and she said they were walking home from preschool, and my son was walking and said to my wife, Mom, I wish I had a dad.
Oh, man. Oh.
I'm in LA on the phone, and my heart, I felt like a punch in the chest. I'm like, oh my goodness. He was only 4 years old at the time, and he wouldn't come to the phone.
But he was recognizing that, right? That dad wasn't around too much,
He wouldn't come to the phone. He was mad. He wouldn't talk to me. And so, I mean, and then the NBA is 82 games, 41 games on the road.
That's rigorous, man.
It's a lot of games, and especially when you have 41 on the road, and, like tomorrow I head out on a 12-day trip, 5 games, 5, maybe 6. And, now it's my son's 16 and my mom's with him on that trip, and he's very self-sufficient and just working through school. So it's not what it was. But there's a lot of sacrifice.
There's a lot of sacrifice. Yeah.
And like you said, there's only so many positions, and everyone thinks it's glamorous and you're making a ton of money. I mean, there's also an aspect of there's so few of those positions, and they're very desirable. So there's people are willing to take these positions for not the amount of money you would expect. Now, don't get me wrong. You get paid well, and you get paid fairly. And
you travels and stuff like that.
But you travel, and your travel and everything's covered, but you don't get paid more because of travel or anything like that. And to be fair, I got paid well with Golden State, but it took me, I was 17 years with the Seahawks, and when I started, it took a good decade to probably even start to be paid kind of what was equitable to a day in practice.
Private practice.
In private practice.
10 years into working with the Seahawks was even close to what you would make in private practice.
Yeah. And then every year from there it got better and better. But that's 17 years.
That's a good career length.
yeah.
Almost 2 decades.
Almost 2 decades, just that. And so, that's the thing. People think that it's just immediately you're making a ton of money. And no, it's like anything. You need to take the time to kind of prove what it is you can do, unless they come and search for you. Like the Warriors knew my history and Rick knew me, and that was over 20 years of practice already. So you're kind of coming at it from you're standing in a different position by that point.
Yeah.
And like now with the Kings, I mean, they know
who
they
you
know
are,
who I am. They know what I've
is.
done. They know my resume, and it's a different story. But it takes years. It takes years to build that. And to be honest with you, like private practice, it's not easy either. As you know, there's all the business side that we learn very little about, and you kind of learn the hard way. There's staffing and equipment and maintenance and your software and everything.
Costs.
Costs
Just
everywhere.
always keep going up, right?
Yeah.
Never decrease.
Yeah. I mean, I tell you, usually the owner is the one making the least money at the end of the month. And so there's sacrifice whichever way you go. And I mean, the nice thing with private practice, is that hopefully you have more time at home and you can make that happen. But, even when you're at home, you got all the worries and stresses, and it's not in...
Yeah, it's basically 24/7, 365 days a year. Like it's like a child that never really grows up having private practice. You come home.
It.
You remember it because you've done so many clinics
Rob
too. Right?
Nielsen and I had Performance Health for almost 20 years. Over 20 years, but it just closed because of the pressures of today's economy and
that's so unfortunate.
Yeah. And I started my first practice in Aldergrove and grew that, and Mike Baldwin and Johnny Suchdev ended up taking that over, and they're still going strong out there in Langley, and which is beautiful to see. So yeah.
Yeah, it was such an amazing history, but very interesting story about this private practice versus working with professional teams. I'll tell you a little story of my own that kind of was a deciding factor for me to open up the clinic. And as I said, I've been following you and wanting to follow in your footsteps, and that's why I joined Fortius, and to learn from the best. And ironically, the person that I wanted to be exactly who, like you, I wanted to be Gerry. Maybe one day, if I was lucky, was the person that made me to decide to go the opposite way, because of, that conversation that we had in Cologne. I remember that talk that you gave, and I had the privilege of having, 6-7 hours of your time, I think over a couple of, bottles of wine and food and just discussion. I'm like, hey, tell me what Gerry, tell me about your life and what it is. And I think over the 2 years of working with you, seeing how, you're always traveling and, in, out, and it's so difficult to even keep a patient base here because patients are like, oh, Gerry's gone again, right? And so I'm like, okay, what does the future hold for me? Doing 20, 30 years of that, and then after that, what's next, right? And so I think, the person I wanted to aspire to be was the leading cause of me saying, 2 years in, maybe what works best for me is to go the opposite way and, open up a private clinic and, have that and grow that over 20, 30 years, and then see where that goes. Obviously you lose opportunities on the other side, right? Like leaving that organization, maybe doors would have opened for me, right? For professional teams, if any.
For sure. Like you said, though, but now look what you've got. It's amazing. Like I said, you think of the number. It's a very successful multidisciplinary clinic that provides a service for the community that and a level of expertise that otherwise with Fortius being gone, sadly,
very sadly.
It's places like this that provide an expertise at a level that you just don't find.
Well, I appreciate you even thinking of us like that.
No question. I mean, absolutely.
No, I really appreciate it. I think that's something that the new generation, sometimes, I have a lot of students coming and observing me, and I'm sure they reach out to you, and they're all doing so many things, and their ideal goal is working with a professional team. A lot of especially people that want to go into sports therapy, but they don't recognize some of the sacrifices you have to give. Spending away time and 17 years of working with professional teams before you even got paid properly, right? And grinding and all those sacrifices. I think that's such a important lesson, for people to recognize that it's a grind work.
Yeah, it doesn't come quick. You have to be in it for a number of reasons. Mm-hmm. And the money can't be the driver, because you'll be sadly disappointed if it's just about the money.
It's never about the money. Yeah, money always comes with, grind work, right? If any, right? But I think anyone that goes into professions like this, you have to love it. And you have to be able to say, you know what? My top priority, the first sentence you said, is about the patients, right? It's about the people. You're in that moment. They're there. That's their time. That's you focusing on them, right?
We used to, for all the kind of jokes and things that people make about philosophy-based chiropractic. I mean, I remember one of the best things I learned was at a Parker seminar, and can't remember his name. Brilliant speaker, but he said, the color of healing is now I'm gonna forget. What's the herb, the smell? It's like a purple pinky color.
Not jasmine.
Not jasmine. Oh my goodness.
Now my brain is
I know. You guys anything pink? Lavender. Thank you. I'm glad. So
we have an audience here.
we had. He said, put a piece of lavender on the door jamb, because it's the color of healing. And he said, before you go in the room, just touch that and set your intention to pay attention to only that patient. And I did that. I did that for years. And because that's really what it's about. What is it in healthcare? What do people want to be heard? And that's the problem in healthcare today. Everyone's so freaking busy.
There's no time.
There's no time. They go down to the clinic to see their GP, and the GP's slammed. Literally, you got another problem, you got to book another appointment. When I was in private practice, my initial assessments were always 1 hour. Never different, because people need that time to be heard. There's a saying, if you let someone talk long enough, they're going to tell you what's wrong with them. If you let them talk longer, they're going to tell you how to fix them. And that's the truth. And that's what's missing in society today and in healthcare.
Yeah.
People just need the time to be heard. And I would have in private practice, I'd get people who had seen other providers and other professionals, and they'd be like, you're my last chance. And I was like, oh, great. Okay, thanks.
Thanks for putting pressure on me, right?
But, were my skills much different? Was I using different techniques? No.
Oh, probably mix of similar.
Very similar.
Yeah.
But the difference I know for sure is they felt that they were heard and that I understood.
And you took the time to properly assess them.
And that's it. And so then people have a little bit of trust and a little bit of faith, and that goes a long way. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, people get caught up in numbers. Oh, I got to see 25 a day, 17 a day, whatever that number. You got to find out how many you can do in a day where you still have the energy to give, mm-hmm. and that you're not killing yourself, because your professional life is a long time. Mm-hmm. And if you burn yourself out, you're not serving yourself, and you can't serve your patients, and ultimately then you can't serve your family. And so you can't get married to the numbers. You need to provide the best service possible with the resources you have. And, some people can work quicker, and some people can do 30-minute appointments, and whatever it is. But as long as you feel like you are providing a high quality service and people feel that they're receiving that, they're going to keep coming.
Yeah, and I think that raises a good point that you say, that not forgetting that, 26 years later, you're still doing this versus, like when you were in the first, obviously when we all start, first couple of years, we're doing so much for our patients. But I think as we get more successful and are busy and have a wait list, sometimes it's so easy to kind of cave in to that and just say, oh, no, what? Okay, I have like 9 people waiting outside the door for me, right?
Right.
And so, but not forgetting that at the end of it, you signed that, you've given that oath and want to make sure that you
100%.
provide the best service, the best quality care.
One of my biggest inspirations was the first clinic I worked at in Aldergrove.
Yeah.
Dr. Gabrielle LaSalle. She practiced for I don't even know how many years, 20, 30 years. And she taught me something, and she did it to the day she retired. Every new patient, at the end of the day, she'd call them and say, hey, just, had your first appointment today. Just want to check in and see how you're doing. The gratitude people express, oh my goodness, like you're actually calling to see how that one thing, people immediately feel cared for. And that
Simple call.
I ended up seeing entire families because I called mom or I called dad or
even simple email. Hey, how you doing? Right?
Yeah. Now, ironically, when I first started email, I didn't even, I still remember the day I was sitting in the clinic in Aldergrove at the computer and I'm like, okay, email.
How many years ago was that?
This is 97.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the screen and I can't even remember what it was, which browser it was.
Yeah.
And and it was funny because this girl was asking me to go on a date. I didn't even know where reply was. I'm reading the message going, okay, this sounds really interesting, but I can't figure out how I actually respond to this. And then I don't think I ever did. And
so
I didn't go on the date. I didn't get the date. So, I ended up marrying my wife, so it was probably okay that it worked out that way.
Universe works in mysterious ways.
The universe. My first email was from a girl that I couldn't hit reply because I couldn't find the freaking button. Never thought that story was going to come up, did you? That was 1997. What would it have been? I can't even remember what that was.
I was in high school.
AOL? Maybe it was AOL or something.
Yeah, I remember. 1997 practice. That's crazy. So now that Gerry is working with the Sacramento Kings, what's next? What's the plan on the horizon?
Boy.
Is it just kind of like still figuring things out and...
it's a great question. I have no idea. You know what?
That's a good answer.
I have this opportunity through this season, and we'll kind of see how it goes from there. I'm fortunate. I have a few hockey guys in town that I work with personally, and again, and a few private clients that I have the pleasure of spending time with, and because I will not concede on the length of appointments right now. And even, what I did when Nicholas was at home and I needed to be there was with those clients, I'd only book 2 or 3 in a day. Mm-hmm. But I'd go to their house, and if it was an hour, it was an hour. If it was an hour and a half, it was an hour and a half. And because, again, it just goes back to me that there shouldn't be my situation being able to do that is unique, that I can spend that time.
Yeah, it's not too common.
Not common, but in those situations you can spend the amount of time that's needed, and people with those resources are happy to pay for that service because they don't have to go anywhere. Service comes to them. So if I wasn't with the Kings, I'd probably just right now continue with that until I don't know, until we see kind of what the next chapter brings. Yeah. My big hope, honestly, Andy Burke, a colleague of mine who I worked with in the UK, and we've continued to work together, and took Dr. Guy Voyer's fascial fellowship out of New York, and he and I are putting a course together. I taught ART with ART for many years, which was I loved it. Teaching is so much fun, and so we'll hopefully have that manual therapy course out, by hopefully before the end of this year. And so I'd love to teach.
Well, CubeCore is always open. We have a space. If you need a space in North Vancouver.
This will be our first spot in Vancouver to stop, for sure.
Man.
So, yeah, maybe some teaching. I would love an opportunity to maybe, do a job like Rick's, where I got to oversee with the Warriors, and to put together a team and a staff and do things in a very integrated fashion, much in the style that I was taught from Rick. and so who knows?
Well, you're putting it out to the universe right now, right?
We'll put it out there, and who knows what'll come, but whatever comes,
always move forward, right, with it.
Always move forward.
So the last section of our show that we ask our guests is, if you were to go back in time, would you have picked the same career path? If yes, what would you give? What advice would you give to younger Gerry, younger yourself? And then if not, what would you have done differently?
Boy, oh boy.
It's a tough one, huh?
That is a good question. Would I have done? You know what I would have? I wouldn't have changed. I wouldn't have changed anything. I mean, I was that kid that grew up in Surrey, and man, I've seen the world. I've been to 3 Olympics, 5 World Championships, 3 Super Bowls, 2 NBA Finals. I've been to the women's World Cup in hockey.
The list is
oh my gosh, like when I was there in London, I traveled the world with them, saw South Africa, and just some of the most beautiful places on the planet. And like I said, my only not regrets, because I mean I don't regret. I wish I was more present when I had the time with family. So if I could change something, it would be more that. It wouldn't be the professional side. I mean, I would tell my younger self, calm down, man. Relax. It's all going to be okay. I dated this girl when I was in chiropractic college, and she used to say, there's big G and little G. Let big G take care of the details. Little G will be okay. And you know what? I always took that with me, and it's like we've said a few times, the universe, you know what? I truly believe the universe is always working for our best good.
Yeah.
It may not be the answers that we want at a given time, and we may not understand why certain things happen, but eventually you get to a point, you look back and go, okay, I get it now. Mm-hmm. And really it's about having that faith that is the case, that the universe ultimately is working in our favor and behind the scenes, and we just need to just hold firm in that belief, and things tend to work out. And so that would be my younger self. Calm down, man. Calm down. Everything will be good. And I would do what I did. Was there any more in there?
That's it.
Okay.
And that's the perfect way to, I guess, end things. Gerry,
excellent. It's a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you so much.
Honored to be here.
It's a pleasure and honor for me, man. Thank you.
Likewise.